For many years now, 6-scale companies have been producing movie icons, Hollywood legends, superheroes. But there's one genre that's been overlooked. A genre I hold very near and dear to my heart. It was practically an obsession. An obsession that started with 2 coins. What's going on, my fellow world warriors? Brooklyn Wolf back at it again with not a review this time. This time I decided to try something new with my top 10 most wanted 6-scale figures fighting game edition. So strap yourselves in, get comfy and order that takeout, and come with me on this nostalgic journey on fighting games and the impact they had on me. The smell of cigarette smoke and musk in the air, the clacking of buttons, people screaming at each other because they can't hear themselves talk since the music and sound effects on these arcade cabinets have been turned up to 11. Welcome to the arcade. If you were a child of the 80s and 90s, like myself, the arcade scene was like a second home. You can spend hours in there playing and marveling at games that were, at the time, state of the art. For many, it was sacred ground. It was a place where you got to make friends, rivals, and enemies. Of course, you would have the occasional run-in with the more dangerous crowd, where you would stop going to the arcade for a little while. Eventually, you go back, after scoping the area out, of course, to make sure they're not there anymore. And then you reconnect with the people that you met and resume playing the games that you love. My brother and I spent so much time at these places that with the limited amount of money that our parents gave us, it always came down to, do we buy food with this? Toys? Comics? Or do we spend it playing games? The struggles we had as children. Simple times. The arcades we used to frequent were Chinatown Fair, located in Chinatown, and this is for all you Brooklynites, More Fun, located at Bay Parkway. Now, More Fun has not existed for years, but that was the place where I had my first experience with Street Fighter, and that was Street Fighter 1. If anyone remembers, the Street Fighter 1 arcade cabinet had these 2 huge rubberized pads, and the strength of your punches and kicks were determined on how hard you slammed on them. An immersive experience it was not. Charming? Yeah, kind of, but it was clunky as hell. Stupid rubberized pads aside, pulling off special moves was impossible. But when you did pull it off, obliterating your opponent's health was quite an experience. Not a great game, but it has its charm. Time passes, and one year, I, with the family, go to Hong Kong to visit family and friends. And one day, my brother and I, we wandered into an arcade just to see what they had. And immediately, my eyes were drawn to this fighting game that was neatly tucked away in the corner. The one thing I noticed was some of the elements that it shared with another game that I loved playing at the time, Final Fight. The more I played the game, it dawned on me, this is part 2 to that game with the awful buttons. Once I made the connection, I came to another realization. this game was good. Everything about it was a major step up from the first one. From the graphics, the sound, the control. It was firing on all cylinders. And of course, my first pick was Ryu. I was the only one playing the game, and not knowing what I was doing, naturally, I got my ass kicked by Chun-Li. So we return home to New York, months go by, and one day after school, my mom offered to take my brother and I to More Fun. As we enter the location, the first thing we see was this huge group surrounding this one machine. As we approached the crowd, I heard some familiar sounds. Sounds that I heard months earlier back in Hong Kong. And when we finally got a good angle to see what this machine was, I immediately said to my brother, "Whoa, this is the game that I played back in Hong Kong. What's everyone doing here? Like, why is everyone crowded around this?" Even though I did not get to spend too much time with Street Fighter 2 in Hong Kong, it was still love at first sight. So seeing this crowd playing this game that I thought was awesome, but sadly no one was playing, it put a smile on my face that this quote-unquote obscure game that I stumbled upon in Hong Kong became this popular. This was the beginning of the fighting game phenomena. As it grew and expanded, so did my love and obsession for it. I loved it so much, I would buy video game magazines that covered the game, just so I could look at the graphics when I'm home. You have to remember, the Super Nintendo port did not exist yet, so the only way to see this game when you're not in the arcades was through magazines. And when the magazines had developer interviews and bios for each character, it was an added bonus because I wanted to learn more about this world and the characters. It did not end there. I collected the Hong Kong manhwa, which means comic in Chinese. In retrospect, it wasn't that good. It wasn't bad. The illustrations were pretty decent for the time. Even though I couldn't read Chinese and didn't fully understand what the story was about, through the illustrations alone, you could tell that the story was kind of out there, even by Street Fighter standards. But you know what? It didn't matter. It had Street Fighter on it, so I had to get it. Despite the Hong Kong manhwa coming up with its own wacky lore, it's still a hell of a lot better than whatever the fire this is. We don't talk about this. We don't talk about this. Like, look at this. What is this even? The sad truth is, I actually bought this. This is the perfect example of when hype goes wrong. I will never make that mistake ever again. Anyway, and in my never-ending pursuit of collecting Street Fighter merchandise, I even collected these cards. This was the power of Street Fighter 2. It turned me into an obsessive fanatic and served as a gateway into other fighting games. The next fighting game that sank its fangs into me was Fatal Fury, or for all you weebs out there, Garo Densetsu, which also means Legend of the Hungry Wolf. What a sick title. This game introduced us to the legendary badass himself, Terry Bogard, or as I like to say, Terry Bogado. While this game was not as polished as Street Fighter 2, it was still a lot of fun and definitely left its mark on me. Like the mark of the wolf? Like Brooklyn Wolf? Get it? You get it. With the popularity of Street Fighter at an all-time high, other video game companies wanted a piece of the action. So during the 90s, there was an explosion of fighting games. My brother and I would do our best to keep track of them all by playing the newest releases in the arcades and buying the home console ports for the PlayStation and Sega Saturn. It was a bit overwhelming, but we managed and had fun in the process. While these fighting games were amazing in their own right and made contributions to the genre, the three franchises that received most playtime in our home were the Street Fighter series, the King of Fighters series, and the Tekken series. While I do love the Tekken series and enjoyed getting my ass beat by my brother, I had more of an attachment with Street Fighter and Fatal Fury / King of Fighters, because Street Fighter you had Ryu, and with King of Fighters you had Terry Bogard. These two are my favorite fighting game characters of all time, and I would always wonder, who would win in a fight? That question will forever remain unanswered. However, on August 2000, people were given the opportunity to find out who was the strongest.
Capcom versus SNK. Millennium Fight 2000.
I lost my shit. The only other game that made me lose my shit even harder came out the following year.
Capcom. This is the tournament for the new millennium. You'll experience the most exciting battle in history. Let's get ready to battle. Feel the intensity when power and technique collide. Crush the competition. A battle beyond your imagination. Let the martial arts madness begin. 2001 is the year we make contact. Welcome to the revolution. Capcom versus SNK2. Millionaire Fighting 2001.
If this shit did not make you rock hard, then I don't know what to tell you. You were probably never a fan of fighting games to begin with, and you have no soul. The two giants of the fighting game genre had finally come face to face in what is considered the greatest crossover ever. Well, before Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, of course. But at the time, this was the culmination of producing the finest fighters ever by both companies Capcom and SNK for a decade. If you were one of those weirdos that had issues with the gameplay, you could not deny the greatness of the soundtrack. I mean, listen to this. Sublime. Simply sublime. The CVS series was an absolute dream come true for me. Finally, my two favorite characters are in the same game. Technically, the first crossover happened in SNK vs. Capcom Match of the Millennium on the Neo Geo Pocket, which I owned, of course. And it was great. I had so much fun with that game, but CVS 1 and CVS 2, they were on a different level. Before these games came out, my love and obsession for fighting games was pretty damn high. When these games came out, my obsession evolved into its final form. I tried to draw a comic or a fan manga of Capcom vs. SNK. Oh, hey, you just learned something new about me. I love to draw. been drawing my whole life, self-taught. These were drawn a long time ago. And as I'm looking at them now, I cringe because it's so unrefined. And then life, with all of its pleasant things, happened. I stopped drawing for a long time. And one day, I picked up a pencil and decided to give it another shot by rebooting the fan manga with a different art style. And as luck would have it, life happened again. So I stopped again. Starting to sense a pattern, huh? Yeah, I don't blame you. A year or two goes by, and I decide to pick up a pencil again, and decided to reboot the fan manga again, with an art style that I think I've finally settled on. One of the things I've always struggled with as an artist was finding my own style. Since high school up until this point, I'd been drawing nothing but fan art of Capcom and SNK characters, whilst trying to emulate their styles. And with this forever in progress, thrice rebooted fan manga, I really made a conscious effort to develop my own style, and I think I succeeded. And you're probably wondering at this point, what the hell does any of this have to do with the title of the video? As I briefly mentioned during the introduction, fighting games are important to me because they shaped me into the person I am today. I won't go into that now because if I did, we would be here for an hour, probably even more. Maybe I'll make another video about that someday. But I will summarize with this. Many of these were drawn during the time when Capcom were no longer making fighting games and SNK were MIA. During this difficult period where Capcom and SNK didn't care anymore, I never stopped caring. These characters and their games have lived rent-free in my mind for so many years. I will finish this manga one day. It's just gonna take a long time because, life. So there you have it. My personal history with fighting games and the impact they had on me. Now, without further ado, let's get on with the list. But one last thing before we get to it. Sorry, last one. I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. And if you have any stories you want to tell about your history with fighting games, please share them in the comments below. This top 10 list will go in order of priority. And to kick things off, number 1 is, I'm sure you all can figure out who it is.
1.
The legendary Hungry Wolf, Teddy Bogado. That's right, I already own one and I want another. This Terry was produced by Worldbox, and it was based off of the CG animated series, The King of Fighters Destiny. This is one of those rare moments where deviating from the source material was a good thing. Out of the box, it was impossible to pull off these poses. It was only achievable after I swapped the stock body for an N35, which was at the time TV League's bulkiest body on the market. And you know when a stock body is gutter trash when it features joints like this. Toy companies, you gotta stop using elbows like this. Please, I beg of you. This footage was filmed a few years ago. I couldn't bring myself to finish the review. It wasn't the original figure because of the body swap, which is why I want a new Terry. To date, we have 3 Kyo, 3 Mai Shiranui, 2 Iori, 2 Athena, 2 Leona, and 1 Terry. Hey, come on! Are you serious? He deserves a proper 6-scale figure. Terry is an iconic legend. He got into Smash Ultimate for crying out loud. Give me my Terry Bogard figure, especially one based off of King of Fighters 15 or Mark of the Wolves. Hell, give me both of them.
Two.
The Prince of Southtown. Rock Howard desperately needs a figure, because if you have the legendary wolf, you gotta bring in the cub. I dream of the day when I can have Terry and Rock standing side by side with one another, or dynamically posed as if they're about to get into a friendly sparring match.
Three.
Originally viewed as just a female Ryu, Sakura has come into her own and become one of the most popular additions to the Street Fighter roster. Currently, I'm waiting for the unofficial DIY Sakura set, which comes with the portrait and outfit. The body you have to get separately. I'm gonna level with you. Official, third party, I don't care. I just want these figures. And like Terry and Rock, I want to have a similar setup between Sakura and Ryu.
Four.
The greatest Taekwondo practitioner, Kim Kafwan. Fun fact, Kim Kafwan was one of the inspirations in creating Killer Instinct, the sickest, most batshit insane fighting game ever, and I love it. That alone earned him 4th spot, right? No. Not only is he awesome to use, when I saw him in the Fatal Fury 2 animated special, it was a wrap. He's such an awesome character and he deserves a figure.
Five.
Maki may be obscure to you, but she's not obscure to me. Before my love affair with fighting games began, I was crazy into Final Fight. She may not have the legacy of Mai Shiranui, but as Capcom's visual equivalent, absolutely. So I'd love to see a figure of her.
Six.
If you have Terry Bogard, you need to include his arch nemesis. Canonically, he's dead, but as far as Fatal Fury villains go, he's definitely the most memorable.
7.
I know, you're surprised. A non-Capcom or SNK character? The first time I played Guilty Gear on the PlayStation 1, when I chose Soul, the first thing I thought was, why does Soul look so cool? And he was awesome and powerful. And with every sequel, he continually got cooler and more badass.
Eight.
The Emperor of Muay Thai himself, Tong Po. I'm playing. He's not Ryu's arch nemesis, but he is his eternal rival and instrumental in shaping Ryu into who he is today.
Nine!
It's showtime! Fighting strike!
The Red Cyclone with his beautiful muscles.
You know, I rarely play as Zangief. My buddy, the Drace Point, does. If you're a fan of movies, please check out his channel in the link below. He does great movie reviews. Anyways, as I was saying, I don't play as Zangief, so why is he on the list? I don't know, I threw him up there out of pity. I'm just kidding. Although I don't use him in the games, there's no denying just how visually striking he will be in your display. You know, every character in Street Fighter 2 has iconic, amazing themes, but Zangief's hits different. You know what they should do? He's gonna be such a large figure, they should include those sound chips you would find in some Transformers figures. They should put one inside of him, and every time you pick him up, his theme song plays.
Final!
That's right, I'm capping this list with the figure that inspired this video. As I mentioned in my Iconic Studios Ryu review, the figure was a dream come true, but his proportions and overall character design are not my favorite. He looks the best in CVS 2 and Street Fighter 3. Considering that there's already a phenomenal Ryu figure, thanks to Iconic Studios, this is why I put him last on the list. Give those other figures some time to shine, and then you could circle back to Ryu. I'm in no rush. The other characters on the list, they're priority. So there it is. My top 10 most wanted 6-scale figures based off of fighting game characters. Not everyone's gonna agree with this list, and that's alright. We have 3 decades worth of colorful characters many of us have developed attachments to. This is just the tip of a huge, vast iceberg. Mind you, this isn't even a top 10 favorites. That's something else entirely. There are some on this list I don't even pick in the games they're featured in. But for the sake of variety and connection to other characters, I chose them. My fellow world warriors, let's show these companies that we want more. These are our legends, our icons, our superheroes.